was a holiday weekend for Broadway, meaning good things for nearly every single show after a couple of very bad weeks for Broadway, which is typical for the time of year. And Juliet was up $183,000 in 4% capacity to 96% capacity total at an average ticket price of $109. Good recovery for And Juliet. This is definitely one that in weaker weeks I'm starting to get more concerned about because it's getting fairly low, but this was a good week for them. Aladdin was up $314,000 and 5% capacity to 96% capacity total at an average ticket price of $98. This is a perfect encapsulation of the swings that Aladdin on Broadway has at the current moment. They're not consistently selling extremely well every single week, but they sell well enough on the good weeks that it more than offsets the bad weeks. Again, Aladdin is in a place where could Disney decide to replace it with something else if they decide they want to bring Hercules over? Sure, they could, but it's also in a place where Aladdin could probably stick around for a few more years, assuming it remains constant at where it is right now. All Out was up $124,000 and 10% capacity to 88% capacity total at an average ticket price of $84. Rising tide lifts all ships. Better week for All Out, but it's still not doing well overall. Buena Vista Social Club was up $153,000 and 1% capacity to selling out standing room only at an average ticket price of $126. Very strong week for this show. In one of the few shows that was down this week, Bug was down $70,000 and 8% capacity to 82% capacity total at an average ticket price of $117. Still a good week for the show, just not as good. Chess was up $209,000 and 1% capacity to 95% capacity total at an average ticket price of $144. This is one of the definitive hits of the year. Chicago was up $93,000 and 1% capacity to 99% capacity total at an average ticket price of $165. I need you to understand, this is the second most financially successful week in the entire run of Chicago on Broadway. Whitney Leavitt has done wonders for them. They are more than fine. Death Becomes Her was up $195,000 and 4% capacity to 95% capacity total at an average ticket price of $104. Good to see this show have a big increase. They did not have the best last couple of weeks. A couple of people have been asking in my comments the last couple of weeks if I think that this is a result of Megan Hilty leaving the show. I can tell you it is not. They had a drop before Megan Hilty left. They did not have a drop when she left. There was a drop a couple of weeks after she left. This is not her. This is not a result of her leaving the show. Also keep in mind we had a preview of what her impact on the show was when she had her medical leave of absence last year. Quite honestly, I think that Death Becomes Her is just starting to transition into its second year on Broadway, becoming more of a long runner and relying on tourists. The weather's been awful the last couple of weeks, and this is something all shows go through. I think you could see this most recently with Outsiders back earlier in the fall. Hadestown was up $265,000 and 2% capacity, selling out standing room only at an average ticket price of $156. These are incredible numbers for Hadestown. Like, there's no way around it. Those are incredible numbers for Hadestown. Hamilton was up $349,000 and 2% capacity, selling out standing room only at an average ticket price of $205. Cursed Child was up $343,000 and 1% capacity to 99% capacity total at an average ticket price of $209. Hell's Kitchen was up $311,000 and 4% capacity to 97% capacity total at an average ticket price of $108. Good to see this show getting a jump. It was not doing well even after they announced the closing notice. I'm happy that the audience is full for the cast for their last couple of weeks. Just in Time was up $148,000, up 1% capacity, selling out standing room only at an average ticket price of $259. We're still waiting on who the Bobby Darin between Jonathan Groff and Jeremy Jordan is. And look, if they can do even slightly comparable to what Groff is doing, this show could stick around a while. Marjorie Prime closed up $50,000 with no change in capacity, being at 95% capacity total at an average ticket price of $92. This show did fine its whole run. Maybe Happy Ending, where it was Helen J. Shen's final week in the role of Claire, as well as being the first week for roughly 2 months that Darren Criss is taking Tuesdays off, was up $201,000, down 1% capacity to 98% capacity total at an average ticket price of $160. We shall see how the show does moving forward. MJ was up $351,000 and 7% capacity to 97% capacity total at an average ticket price of $134. Moulin Rouge was up $267,000 and 3% capacity to 99% capacity total at an average ticket price of $117. Good to see this show up a bit post-closing notice. Hopefully it stays up and full for the sake of the cast for their last several months on Broadway. Oh Mary was up $83,000 and 3% capacity to 99% capacity total at an average ticket price of $130. Oh Mary's still doing great. Operation Mincemeat was up $201,000 with no change in capacity being at 99% capacity total at an average ticket price of $152. Look, the big question here is what happens after the cast replacement. It's gonna sell well through the end of the current cast. We just have to wait and see what happens when they leave. Ragtime was up $77,000 with no change in capacity, still selling out at an average ticket price of $138. Ragtime continues to sell incredibly well. 6, where it was the last week of the previous cast, yes, the new cast started yesterday, the numbers end on Sunday, so this is only the previous cast, was up $227,000 and 19% capacity to 85% capacity total at an average ticket price of $107. Now, if I can just add a quick note that we should all remember with this incoming cast of 6, 6 is really not in a good place right now in terms of sales, and that is something that predates this current cast. So if 6 is to close at any point during this upcoming cast's run, it is not a result of anyone in this current cast being cast. It was already selling badly. They are an attempt to prolong the life of the show, considering it is a bunch of favorites from previous casts and 2 people who have a significant following outside of the show. Maybe it will work. Maybe it won't. But let's just all remember that and not let people spread narratives that anyone is killing the show because the show is already in a really bad place. Anyways, Stranger Things did not release numbers this week because they were filming a pro shot, so that's just an empty spot here. Book of Mormon was up $233,000 and 5% capacity to 98% capacity total at an average ticket price of $118. The Great Gatsby was up $453,000 and 13% capacity to 96% capacity total at an average ticket price of $111. This was a good week for The Great Gatsby after a couple of weeks of not being in the strongest place. I am still questioning the post-Jeremy Jordan life of this show, but they should be good through the end of his run. The Lion King was up $405,000 and 5% capacity to 98% capacity total at an average ticket price of $144. The Lion King will outlive the apocalypse. The Outsiders was up $289,000 and 5% capacity, selling out standing room only at an average ticket price of $149. This is going to sell incredibly well through at least the end of all of the remaining original Broadway cast members. We shall see how it does once they have a new cast. In one of the most positive signs of the week, Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York was up $140,000 and 10% capacity to 92% capacity total at an average ticket price of $98. This was the second highest grossing week of Two Strangers Broadway run so far, and incredibly promising as we head out of slow winter times and into award season where, you know, it's one of very few new musicals, so it stands a decent chance in a lot of categories. On to Wicked, which was up $428,000 and 1% capacity to 99% capacity total at an average ticket price of $137. Wicked does appear to have ended the boost that it got from the film versions, as it is no longer selling out week to week, which it did like entirely from the release of the first film to the release of the second film, but it's still doing incredibly well. It's just come back down to earth of how it normally does incredibly well, not like the expanded film version of that.